In the small village of Umoko, wedding bells were about to ring for Uche and Adaise. The whole village was buzzing. Adaise, a soft-spoken girl with a warm smile, sat quietly beside her mother, Mama Nkechi, who was fixing the final touches on her traditional coral beads. My daughter, Mama Nkechi said, marriage is not just a ceremony. It is a journey. You must enter it with grace and confidence. Adaise nodded, but deep down, her heart wasn't fully at peace. She had overheard Uche's cousin saying something strange days ago. He's only marrying her because of the dowry. Those words haunted her, but she brushed them off, choosing to believe in love. After all, Uche had chosen her, or so she thought. As the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the village in gold, Adas promised herself she would walk into her marriage with pride, no matter what anyone said about her looks or worth. She would carry herself like a queen. At a local palm wine joint that evening, Uche sat with his friends, sipping slowly and laughing loudly. So tomorrow is the big day, one of his friends, Chinedu, shouted, slapping him on the back. Uche forced a smile. Yes. Ah, no, going back now. Another friend, Ebuka, chuckled and said, You they try sha. That girl no fine at all, but you go still chop wedding rice. The group burst into laughter. Uche laughed too, but there was discomfort in his eyes. Stay! Her family is rich, he said quietly. After the marriage, I'll set up that business in the city. The words slipped out without care. To him, Adaise's appearance didn't matter. He saw her as a stepping stone. But what he didn't know was that one of the kitchen girls at the joint, Ifeoma, had overheard everything. She was Adaise's distant cousin, and her ears burned with rage. She picked up her basket quietly and walked out, knowing she had a choice to make: keep quiet or speak up before the wedding. That night, under the moonlight, Ifeoma made her way to Mama Ankechi's compound. She found Adaise alone, brushing her hair by the fire. Sister, she said gently, I need to tell you something. Adaise looked up, surprised but calm. Ifeoma told her everything, what she heard at the palm wine joint, how Uche mocked her, how he only cared about the dowry and the business. Adaise's heart sank, but she didn't cry. She stared into the flames for a long time, then said, Let the wedding happen. Let him mock me, or he will remember this day forever. Her voice didn't tremble. It held a quiet strength. Ifeoma was confused. You still want to go through with it? Adaise smiled slightly. Yes. Sometimes silence is louder than screams. Let tomorrow come. That night, the moon witnessed a woman who had been called ugly prepare to walk down the aisle with dignity and a plan. The sun rose slowly over Umoko, casting a golden glow across the village square. Drummers began their rhythms, and women danced in colorful wrappers, their laughter echoing in the air. Guests poured in from nearby villages, some dressed in lace, others in Ankara, but all eager to witness the grand wedding. Uche stood tall in his well-pressed agbada, a forced smile on his face. He waved at guests and posed for pictures, but his eyes kept scanning for Adaise. Where is she? He mumbled. People around him praised his looks. Fine man like you, ain't? You must be proud. He nodded, pretending to be, but deep down, all he cared about was how fast he could collect the bride price and travel to the city. His friends stood nearby, snickering quietly, whispering insults about Adaise. Uche joined in with small chuckles, masking his nervousness. He had no idea what was coming. All he knew was it was wedding day, and nothing could stop it now, or so he thought. All heads turned when a slow, steady drumbeat echoed across the compound. Adaise appeared, dressed in a royal blue George wrapper, gold beads around her neck, and the glittering head tie that shimmered like the morning sun. Her skin glowed good like fresh palm oil, and her posture was regal. The crowd gasped. Is this a Daisy? Someone whispered. She looks like a queen. Uche blinked several times. This wasn't the ugly girl he had laughed about. This was someone different, someone powerful. Adaze walked slowly, each step deliberate, her chin raised high. She didn't look at Uche, nor once. She walked past him, greeted the elders, and stood beside Mama Nkechi. The village elder leaned towards Uche and said, "You're a lucky man. Don't joke with this kind of woman." Uche swallowed hard. For the first time, he felt small beside her. Something in her silence pierced his confidence, and she hadn't even spoken yet. As the elder held out the kola nut, signaling the start of the marriage rites, Adais was called forward. "Do you accept this man as your husband?" the elder asked. The crowd leaned in, eager to hear her response. Adaize smiled faintly, looked at Uche, and said, "I accept, but only if he accepts all of me. My beauty, my strength, my silence, and my scars." The elder turned to Uche. "Do you accept her as your wife?" Uche cleared his throat and said, "Yes, I do." But Adaize raised a hand. "Wait," she said, voice calm but firm. "Before we continue, I want to say something." The crowd murmured. Adazi turned to Uche and said, "You called me ugly. You planned to use me. But let me tell you, this face you mock today is the same face that will haunt your pride tomorrow. I know everything." Gasps filled the air. Uche's eyes widened, and for the first time he had nothing to say. For a moment the whole village froze. Even the drummers dropped their sticks. Uche stood motionless, his agbada suddenly feeling too heavy. Adaize's words hung in the air like thunderclouds. She didn't shout, she didn't cry, she simply told the truth. "Hey, I know about the palm wine joint," she said. "I know why you're really marrying me, but today you will not make me feel less than I am." Mama Nkechi rose slowly from her seat, nodding in silent approval. Uche opened his mouth to defend himself, but no words came out. His friends who once laughed now looked away, embarrassed. The villagers murmured, some in shock, others in admiration. Ades faced the elders and said, "Let the ceremony continue. I will still marry him, not because I need him, but because he needs to learn that a woman is not a joke." Uche's pride was bruised, but he had no choice. He sat down quietly, realizing the wedding he mocked had turned into his own lesson. The moment came for Uche's family to present the bride price: yams, goats, palm wine, and envelopes filled with naira notes. But something unexpected happened. A daisy stood and said, "Return half of it." The elders looked confused. "Why, my daughter?" one asked. Adaze responded calmly, "Because I am not being sold. I am not merchandise. If this union must happen, let it be based on mutual respect, not profit." The women in the crowd began to nod. Mama Nkechi clapped her hands once, strong and loud. "My daughter speaks truth," she said. The elder hesitated, then nodded. "As you wish." The gifts were returned partially. Uche's father looked embarrassed, but no one dared argue. Adaise had spoken, and tradition now bent to her strength. Uche felt something shift. This was no longer a marriage for show. It was becoming a stage where his intentions were being stripped bare in front of all. At the wedding reception later that day, drinks flowed and food was served. The music returned, but the joy in Uche's face was forced. When it was time for the couple to give their speech, Uche reached for the microphone, but Adaise gently took it first. She smiled at the crowd. "Thank you all for coming. I know today was not what anyone expected, but it's exactly what was needed. Let every young woman here know. Your worth is not tied to a man's opinion. And to every man, she paused, turning slightly to Uche, may you never treat a woman as your backup plan. The crowd erupted in applause. Uche took the mic next, awkwardly. I've learned something today. I've been foolish. Adaze, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope this marriage will change me. The crowd was silent again, this time with respect. Adaze nodded, not smiling, just watching. Her silence was still louder than anything Uche said. As the guests went home and the drums faded into the night, Uche and Adaeze entered their new home, gifted by Adaeze's parents. Inside, the walls were beautifully decorated, the bed neatly laid, and a pot of soup still warm in the kitchen. But the air was tense. Uche sat on the edge of the bed, unsure of what to say. Adaeze removed her jewelry quietly, then walked to the window and stared into the dark. You humiliated me, she finally said, her voice low. Uche stood but didn't come closer. I know, he replied. I thought I was being smart. I didn't know I was being foolish. Adaze didn't turn to face him. This house is not your trophy. This marriage is not your reward. If we are going to live together, you must earn your place here. Uche nodded, feeling the weight of his own selfishness pressing on his chest. That night, the bed remained cold, but Uche's mind was burning with guilt, with shame, and with a desire to make things right. The next morning, Mama Ankechi arrived, carrying a basket of fresh fruits and herbs. She entered the house, looked around, then looked at her daughter. How was the night? She asked knowingly. Adaeze didn't answer. Mama Nkechi turned to Uche. You wanted a wife with money. Now you have a woman with wisdom. Can you handle that? Uche lowered his head. Mama, I was wrong. I've never felt this small before. Mama Nkechi laughed softly. Good, maybe now you're ready to grow. She sat down, slicing mangoes with a small knife. Marriage is not for boys chasing wealth. It's for men who understand value of respect, truth, and partnership. Adaze watched quietly as her mother spoke. Uche listened, every word cutting deep. For the first time, he realized what he had nearly destroyed. Not just a wedding, but a woman's dignity. Later that day, Uche sat outside on a wooden bench while others watered a small flower garden. The silence between them was softer than before. Adaze, Uche said, his voice steady, I don't expect you to forgive me yet, but I want to learn. She didn't stop watering. Learn what? He stood. Learn to be a husband, not a buyer, not a boss, a partner. Adaze placed the watering can down and looked at him, her eyes clear and calm. Then we start with truth. Every day, you show me who you really are, not what you think I want. Uche nodded. And you? She smiled faintly. I've always been myself. You just didn't look properly before. The breeze rustled the leaves, and the quiet between them began to feel less like distance and more like space to rebuild. 2 weeks into the marriage, tongues began to wag. In the village market, under mango trees, and beside cooking fires, everyone had something to say. Did you hear? The bride returned half of the bride price, one woman whispered. And she embarrassed him in front of everyone, another added. Some laughed. Others called Adaze too proud. But many women, especially the younger ones, began to admire her. They said, that's how to hold your worth. Meanwhile, Uche noticed the stares, the chuckles behind his back. He felt the pressure, but for once, he didn't lash out. Instead, he kept to himself and followed Addis to the farm, fetched water, and even helped her cook. Are you now a houseboy? He his friends teased. He only smiled. For the first time in his life, he realized that being a man wasn't about dominance, it was about responsibility. And that realization was changing him, slowly but surely. One hot afternoon, Uche's old friend, Ebuka, came visiting from the city. He wore dark shades, gold chains, and cologne that smelled like foreign trouble. Guy, you dey farm now? He laughed. See your hands. You don't turn to local man. Uche laughed weakly. I'm learning, bro. But Ebuka wasn't impressed. I beg, leave that girl, Mata Jara. You too fine to be tied down by some village girl. Ades came out, greeted Ebuka politely, and went back inside. He laughed. That's her. She no bad, but you still dey forehand. Uche looked him in the eye. Ebuka, respect yourself. The mood shifted. Ebuka raised his brows, surprised. You serious? Uche nodded. She's worth more than all the fake life we chased in the city. Ebuka stood silently for a moment, then scoffed. You've changed. Good, Uche replied, because the old me was a fool. That evening, after Ebuka left, Adaeze sat alone in the backyard, her chin resting on her knees. Uche walked up slowly, holding a small lantern. Are you okay? He asked. She nodded, but her eyes told a different story. What did he say? She asked softly. That you're not enough? Uche sat beside her. He tried, but he failed. I told him I'm the one that wasn't enough for you before. Adaze wiped a tear from her cheek. I'm not made of stone, Uche. I act strong, but it hurts when people talk. He took her hand. Let them talk. Let them watch. One day they'll see what I see now. She looked at him, unsure whether to believe him fully. But in that moment, a little bit of her guard began to fall. Just a little. At dawn, the village woke to an unusual sight. Uche sweeping the church compound. The same Uche who once mocked Adase's simplicity was now scrubbing benches and helping elders carry palm fronds for decoration. Many stopped to watch. Some giggled. Na love do this one, a boy joked, but Uche didn't flinch. Inside him, a new humility had taken root. That Sunday, during the Thanksgiving service, he stood up to give testimony. I came here a proud man, he said, voice shaking. I called my wife names. I married her for selfish reasons, but now I see her with new eyes, and I'm ashamed of who I was. The congregation grew silent. Adaise sat still, not expecting the confession. Today, Uche continued, I thank God for giving me a second chance to become a husband worthy of her love. The entire church clapped. Some men stared at him with new respect. Adaise's heart, still guarded, softened more. He didn't just speak, he showed. After church, the village elders invited Uche and Adaeze to the palace square. Sit down, the oldest one said. We want to talk. Adaeze sat with quiet grace. Uche bowed respectfully. What happened at your wedding was unusual, the elder began, but it opened our eyes. Many men treat their wives like property. You both have challenged that. Another elder added, young girls now walk with their heads higher. Even our daughters now question what kind of man deserves them. Uche looked surprised. Sir, I didn't know we had that kind of effect. The elder smiled. You didn't mean to, but truth doesn't ask permission. It just shines. Then he faced Adazi. Your voice is strong, and it has shaken this village in a good way. Keep speaking. Adazi nodded slowly, a feeling of purpose bubbling inside her chest. Maybe her pain had a bigger reason. That night, Uche handed Adazi a folded piece of paper. What's this? She asked. Something I needed to say, in full. She opened it and began to read. Inside was a handwritten letter. Dear Ades, I used to see marriage as a shortcut to success. I saw you as a stepping stone. I thought you were plain, simple, not my type. But you turned out to be everything I lacked: dignity, depth, courage. You made me look at myself and I didn't like what I saw. I want to thank you for not walking away, for teaching me without raising your voice. I know I don't deserve you yet, but I want to keep trying until I do. Yours, Uche. Adaize folded the letter slowly, her eyes misty. You wrote this? She asked. Uche nodded. For the first time, she leaned on his shoulder. No words, just quiet acceptance. A new beginning was blooming between them. Weeks passed, and Adese's story spread beyond the village. A local women's group invited her to speak at their monthly gathering. Dressed in a simple lace wrapper and gale, she stood before a crowd of women, young and old. We are taught to endure, she began, but we must also teach men how to treat us. If you don't speak, they'll never learn. The hall was silent. Then someone clapped, then another. Soon, the whole room applauded. After her talk, a young girl approached her. Auntie, I used to think being quiet was strength, but now I see it's okay to stand up for myself. Ade smiled. Just remember, your value doesn't shrink because someone else refuses to see it. Uche, who had come quietly and sat at the back, watched his wife with admiration he couldn't hide. She wasn't just his wife anymore. She was becoming a light to others. Back in the village, the youth group invited Uche to speak. They had watched his transformation and wanted to understand it. Bro Uche, why did you change? A boy asked boldly. Uche laughed. Because I almost lost the best thing in my life. He stood before them, not like a big man, but like one of them. Let me tell you something. Beauty fades. Money comes and goes. But respect, that one stays forever. If you don't respect a woman, you don't deserve her. The boys nodded slowly. One raised his hand. How do we know we're ready to marry? Uche smiled. When you're ready to serve, not to be served. When our tears will matter more to you than your ego. That day, Uche became a teacher. Not by title, but by experience, the kind that sticks. One evening, Uche and Adaize sat on the veranda, watching the sun dip behind the hills. For the first time in a long while, they laughed, not forced or awkward, but freely. Remember when you said I wasn't fine? Adaize teased. Uche covered his face, groaning. Ah, you'll never let me forget, Abi. She laughed harder. Nope, that one will enter family history. Uche turned to her. You know now, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. She raised an eyebrow. Because I spoke up? Because you are you, strong, wise, and soft where it matters. Daisy smiled, her eyes warm. And you're no longer a boy. He grinned. Then maybe there's hope for us. Their fingers intertwined, and the silence that followed was no longer heavy. It was peaceful, like two hearts beating finally in rhythm. A year later, Adais walked into their living room to find Uche setting up chairs, decorating with fresh flowers, and placing a small cake on the table. What's going on? She asked, confused. He turned with a smile. Our wedding, the real one, she blinked. Uche, we're already married. He nodded. Yes, but the first one was filled with shame and ego. This one is to honor you, to honor us. Ade stood still, heart racing. Soon, neighbors began to arrive, this time not for food or gossip, but to witness love done right. Uche took Adaize's hands in front of everyone and said, This is the woman I once called ugly, but she became the mirror that showed me my own ugliness. Gasps filled the air, and through her strength, I learned the meaning of beauty, honor, and love. Today, I celebrate her fully." Tears rolled down Adaisy's cheeks. This time, they were tears of healing. From that day on, Adaisy became more than just a wife. She became a symbol of grace in the village. Girls looked up to her. Mothers admired her boldness. Even men began to change how they treated their wives. The elders invited her to speak at festivals, and women from other towns came to seek her advice. As for Uche, he walked with quiet pride, not because he conquered a woman, but because he stood beside one. The change in him was visible, real, and consistent. He now taught young men carpentry and life lessons side by side. "Every nail I hit reminds me, building takes time and care," he'd say. Their home was no longer just a house. It was a classroom of love, respect, and second chances. One quiet evening, as Adaise and Oche sat under the stars, their daughter Ifeoma climbed onto Uche's lap. "Daddy, will I be beautiful when I grow up?" she asked. Uche looked into her bright eyes and smiled. "You already are, my star, but your true beauty will shine from how you treat others and how you let others treat you." Adaise smiled at him, pride dancing in her eyes. He turned to her. "Thank you for not giving up on me." She took his hand. "You gave me no reason to stay before, but now you give me every reason to stay forever." Above them, the stars twinkled in approval. It had been a long journey, from shame to truth, from pride to purpose. And now, what once felt broken had become a blessing.